On this Wednesday night from Rome, Conclave begins. The rules of the secretive ritual to select the next pope.
Never in the history of the Catholic Church have we been so unsure of who it's going to be.
The contenders and the anticipation. Under scrutiny, how a defense lawyer disputed statements made by the woman at the center of the Hockey Canada sex assault trial. Dangerous tit for tat. Fears India and Pakistan are headed toward a nuclear war. Plus, when art imitates life inside the Vatican.
It's entered the world of popular culture.
Reality checking Hollywood's take on the Conclave.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We are in Rome tonight, just steps from Vatican City, where 133 cardinals are now sequestered after the first unsuccessful attempt to elect a new pope. Thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square, waiting for hours for the first smoke signal from the Sistine Chapel. Moans from the crowd as the first ballots were burned. That black smoke meaning they failed to reach the needed two-thirds majority to name a new pope. That vote was just the first of what could be many more in the days ahead to decide a new pope and perhaps a new direction for the Catholic Church. Redmond Shannon is with me here in Rome and begins our coverage tonight.
So, folks, I won't be able to talk to you until you see the white smoke.
A warning message from U.S. Cardinal Timothy Dolan. Before he and his colleagues vote in an election like no other.
Per implorare la sua luce e la sua forza.
Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re telling the men who were about to enter conclave that they should elect a pope that humanity needs at this difficult and complex turning point in history. After Mass, a procession to the Sistine Chapel, which first hosted a conclave in 1492. All 133, including the 4 Canadian cardinals,
Cardinals Collins,
taking a solemn oath of secrecy regarding every detail of the conclave process.
extra omnes.
The doors then closed, the cameras leave, and the vote begins. Canadian tourists Paul and Susan are among those drawn to St. Peter's Square.
I was raised in the church and spent a lot of time in churches, so I don't know, maybe this is the universe speaking to me that I should be here at this time.
All gazes fixed on the chimney above. It's now well over an hour since smoke was first expected, and people here in St. Peter's Square are wondering what is going on inside the Sistine Chapel. Eventually, black smoke and no pope elected on this first ballot.
We know that this is the most global of colleges of electors that the church has had, and a lot of people in that room don't necessarily know each other as well as if this was a more Eurocentric group.
The cardinals return to the Sistine Chapel on Thursday when they will vote up to 4 more times. It's worth remembering that the previous 2 conclaves ended on the second day. Jeff?
Redmond Shannon, thanks, Red. Any baptized Catholic male is technically eligible to be elected pope, but traditionally, for over 500 years, the successful candidates have been chosen from the College of Cardinals, the most senior priests in the Catholic Church. Vatican watchers have offered their predictions on the frontrunners in this conclave. They include Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines, the leading progressive candidate, a trusted figure in Francis's inner circle. He could make history as the first Asian pope. There's also Italian Pietro Parolin, Pope Francis's Secretary of State. He's considered a moderate who has emerged as a leading compromise candidate. Peter Turkson from Ghana has been a vocal advocate on climate change and social justice. He would be the first African pope in 1,500 years. And Peter Erdo from Hungary is the leading conservative candidate, promoting a return to traditional Catholic rules and doctrine. He's spoken out against allowing divorced Catholics to receive communion and against priests blessing gay couples. The conclave also includes 4 Canadian cardinals from Toronto and Quebec. None is expected to be named pope, but in conclave, anything can happen. The chosen candidate will become the church's 267th pope. Conclaves date back 750 years, though some of the rituals, steeped in history, have had to be adapted for the internet age. Here's how it works. The conclave includes 133 cardinals, the largest ever. Only cardinals under 80 are eligible to vote, and they hail from 70 countries, making this the most international conclave in history.
That diversity, I think, is really important, and many of the cardinals did not know each other before they came to Rome.
And the new pope will likely be chosen from within that group.
Never in the history of the Catholic Church have we been so unsure of who it's going to be.
Before entering the Sistine Chapel, the cardinals must give up their phones. Wi-Fi is blocked, and the sacred site is swept for hidden cameras, recording equipment, and bugs. The windows covered to prevent prying eyes. Under Michelangelo's Last Judgment fresco, each cardinal is sworn to secrecy. What happens in conclave stays in conclave.
They can't have contact with the outside world, so for that reason, conclave, they are under the key.
Cardinals write their choice for Supreme Pontiff on a secret ballot paper. Each ballot is then read aloud. A 2/3 majority is needed to win. Up to 4 rounds of voting are held each day to start, and in between votes, they take breaks.
The most productive part of the preparation of the conclave and the actual conclave are the coffee breaks and the meals, because that's when you really get to break bread with one another, get to know each other.
And that's when the backroom strategizing begins.
They could talk in the hallways in the meeting rooms, or take talking groups, for example, national groups, so they can decide on which way the conclave is going.
The voting continues until a winner is declared. After each vote, all eyes are on the chapel chimney. Inside, the ballots are burned in this incinerator, along with a mixture of chemicals to produce the desired smoke color. Black smoke means no new pope and another round of voting. Until eventually, the white smoke appears.
Habemus papam.
Habemus papam. That's Latin for we have a pope. The bells of St. Peter's Basilica ring, and the new pope steps out onto its balcony. The voting continues tomorrow, and I'll be back from Rome a little later in the newscast. For now, though, it's over to Carolyn Jarvis with the rest of today's news.
Thanks, Jeff. The woman at the center of a sexual assault trial in Ontario faced more grueling cross-examination today. She was questioned by a second defense lawyer who suggested the complainant wanted a wild night. The woman alleges she was sexually assaulted by 5 former World Junior Hockey players in 2018. Seán O'Shea was in the London courtroom, and a warning: some of the testimony is disturbing.
Defense lawyer Megan Savard, who's representing Carter Hart, spent several hours challenging the woman's account of what happened June 19, 2018, at the Delta Hotel in downtown London. Hart is charged with sexual assault, along with 4 other former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey team: Alex Formenton, Dylan Dubé, Cal Foote, and Michael McLeod. The men have all pleaded not guilty. Savard questioned EM's memory and tried to show inconsistencies in her statement, suggesting she had different degrees of care with different investigations, including 2 investigations by London police and a separate one launched by Hockey Canada. On Tuesday, McLeod's lawyer David Humphrey suggested EM wanted a wild night with the hockey players after consuming 12 alcoholic drinks and dancing with McLeod and other players at a local bar. Text messages showed McLeod had invited other players to have sex with EM in his hotel room after the woman and McLeod engaged in consensual sex. Humphrey suggested it was EM who wanted to have sex with the other players. EM says she was made to have sex with 5 men without giving her consent, and that she was degraded, spat on, and slapped to the point of pain during her 2 hours in the room. Lawyer Savard told EM, "You adopted the persona of a porn star without being told to do something." EM replied, "No, again, it didn't feel like I had any other option. That is how my body responded based on the situation I was in." EM said the men didn't use physical force and that she was on autopilot at the time. She says she was going through the motions. "I felt numb. I wasn't feeling anything." EM adding she just wanted to make sure I could get out of there. I could go. A defense lawyer not connected with the case says it'll come down to EM's credibility.
In direct examination, her evidence is quite compelling, but we see through cross-examination where a different story is being painted. So I think the trial entirely rests on whether or not her consent will be found to be proven beyond reasonable doubt.
Now, these events happened 7 years ago when EM had a boyfriend. She told the court that she and that boyfriend are still together and are to be married this August. She'll be back in the witness stand on Thursday. Carolyn.
Seán O'Shea in London, Ontario, thank you. In Nova Scotia, the search for 2 missing children is being scaled back. Jack and Lily Sullivan, aged 4 and 6, were last seen on May 2nd near their home in Lansdowne Station.
We're transitioning from a full-scale search to searches of more specific spaces. Spaces that have already been searched by our teams. We're not packing up, and we're not giving up. Our investigation is broad, and it won't end until we know where Lily and Jack are and can bring them home.
Searchers have covered 4 square kilometers of heavily wooded rural terrain. The RCMP Major Crimes Unit is also involved. Pakistan's military says at least 26 people have been killed after India unleashed a large-scale missile attack. It happened in and around Pakistan's side of the disputed Kashmir region. India says it struck several sites it described as terrorist infrastructure, but Pakistan says civilian areas were hit. The strikes were in response to a terrorist attack in Indian-administered Kashmir last month. It's all stoking fears the 2 nuclear forces may be on the brink of a wider conflict. Jackson Prosco reports.
After India struck deep inside Pakistan, Pakistan claimed to have shot down 5 Indian aircraft, calling India's actions a blatant act of war.
Pakistan reserves the right and will respond to this aggression at a time, place, and means of our own choice.
India claims it struck terrorist infrastructure linked to an attack by Islamist militants in the disputed region of Kashmir that killed 25 Hindu tourists last month. Pakistan says at least 31 people, including civilians, were killed by the Indian strikes.
I want to see them stop, and hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now.
The signs of escalation between the 2 nuclear powers are increasingly ominous. India held nationwide civil defense drills, while Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with key cabinet officials. Back and forth shelling led to deaths in Kashmir, while aerial dogfights played out overhead.
And the danger with the ladder of escalation is that it's never clear, how high it goes.
Flight maps show commercial aircraft now avoiding the region, as the international community urges both sides to walk back from the brink.
All it needs is one bad decision by a leader who pushes their luck for this to escalate beyond what we've seen in the past.
Intense anger in both nations could propel the conflict forward, but an economic crisis in Pakistan could also force restraint. Both sides are now bracing for the possibility of all-out war while trying to find an off-ramp from an expanded conflict. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
In Gaza, hospital officials say Israeli strikes killed at least 92 people, including women, children, and 2 journalists. It is one of the deadliest days in recent weeks. The attack comes shortly after Israel approved a plan to intensify operations in Gaza. Israel is calling up tens of thousands of reserve soldiers to carry out its plans. Canada's premiers weigh in. Coming up, what they thought of the Prime Minister's meeting with the U.S. President. The U.S. Central Bank has left the interest rate unchanged at 4.3% for a 3rd straight time, despite pressure from President Donald Trump to lower the key lending rate.
Despite heightened uncertainty, the economy is still in a solid position, and we believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has warned Trump's tariffs will likely push up prices and slow the economy. Economic concerns were the main focus of a virtual meeting between the Prime Minister and Canada's premiers today. Mark Carney briefed premiers on his face-to-face with the U.S. President and agreed to meet in Saskatchewan next month for the first ministers' meeting. David Aiken reports.
Everyone congratulated him on how he performed. Didn't matter what political stripe we came from.
Canada's premiers have made several trips to Washington themselves over the last few months, but none have had an extensive meeting directly with the U.S. president and his top cabinet officials.
The Prime Minister did well yesterday to baseline a new relationship between Canada and the United States.
The PM and the premiers talked about next moves. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, for example, are set to dismantle some interprovincial trade barriers. Premiers encouraged Carney to address bail reform and other crime and justice issues. Premiers also addressed frustration among some in the West.
I spoke pretty strongly in support of Alberta and Saskatchewan because they've been ignored for the last 10 years. They've been treated terribly.
I certainly encourage them all, Premier Smith, Premier Moe, and I believe that they're on board for this, to work together for the good of the country.
To that end, the premiers and the Prime Minister agreed to hold their next in-person meeting in Saskatoon on June the 2nd.
We're in a different league now. We're fighting the tariffs, and we just want to get projects moving forward as quickly as possible.
And Carolyn, I had a quick chat with Public Safety Minister David McGuinty last night as we got off the plane from Washington. And McGuinty was one of the ministers with Carney in the Oval Office. And he told me the Canadian side was very nervous ahead of that meeting, and they were not sure how it would turn out. And so I asked, well, how did it turn out? And he said, 10 out of 10. So now the challenge for the PM and the premiers build on that momentum.
David Aiken in Ottawa, thank you. The Premier of Yukon has announced he's resigning. Ranj Pillai has asked his party to begin the process of holding a leadership convention. He's been Yukon's Premier since January 2023 and says he looks forward to stepping back from public life. Pillai will stay on as MLA until Yukon's election this fall. Reality check. The Trump administration claims Canada's border is a national security threat. But is it? That's just ahead. U.S. President Trump has repeatedly called out Canada for what he calls weak border security. The White House has even described the border as a national security threat and a reason why it slapped tariffs on its closest ally. But internal government documents obtained by Global News show Trump's claims don't actually stand up to scrutiny. Dre Isri has a reality check.
Is there anything he could say to you in the course of your meetings with him today that would get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Just the way it is.
Despite the Oval Office outreach, Canada is in the grip of a trade war. As one of the justifications, the Trump administration has pointed to the northern border.
It's an extreme national security vulnerability on the northern border.
But internal Canadian government documents obtained by Global News through access to information laws say otherwise. The actual statistics from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, however, do not support these claims that Canada is a major threat to U.S. national security.
It's a myth that this is a major national security threat and that somehow Canada is endangering Americans. A myth propagated by certain American politicians.
President of the United States.
The Canadian report was written January 28th, a week after Trump was sworn in for a second time. It's marked Secret Canadian Eyes Only and describes itself as a fact check on statements from Republican lawmakers like this one.
Hundreds of people on our terrorist watch list, they have come across an open border.
Far-right and ISIS-inspired extremists have entered or tried to enter the U.S. from Canada. But the documents say in the last 3 years, only 6 suspects on a U.S. terror screening watch list were intercepted between Canada-U.S. points of entry.
The terrorist crossing has been hugely exaggerated, the same for the quantities of fentanyl. We've been learning from the last couple months from the Trump administration in that the actual truth or facts do not matter.
And that highlights just how tricky future negotiations may be, as the Prime Minister and the government try to fulfill the promise they were just elected on, defending Canadian jobs against Trump. Carolyn?
Drea Isri in Montreal, thank you. Next, cardinals turned celebrities. We'll rejoin Jeff in Rome for a look at the frenzy building around who is choosing the next pope.
Welcome back to Rome. All eyes in Vatican City and around the Catholic world are now fixed on the cardinals, 133 men, many of whom were relatively unknown before the Pope's death, but who now find themselves in the spotlight. Cardinals arrived at the Vatican, swarmed by reporters and cameras, shouting questions like paparazzi chasing celebrities.
There is massive attention and curiosity. It's entered the world of popular culture.
Longtime Vatican watchers suspect the explosion in media attention might have something to do with Hollywood.
Thanks to the movie Conclave, there are millions of people around the world who until a few weeks ago had no idea what a conclave was, and now all of a sudden think they're experts in what a conclave is.
We're about to choose the most famous man in the world.
The recent Oscar-winning movie takes place inside a conclave. Behind closed doors, cardinals engage in a ruthless political power struggle, rife with backstabbing and smear campaigning. The movie received praise for accurately depicting many details of its rituals. But what about all of that political drama?
I've been covering a lot here, and no, it's not like you journalists say. It's not so political. It's the Holy Spirit. But the reality is that they are human beings, and there are progressive, and then moderates, and there are conservative.
Just like the movie's main character, played by Ralph Fiennes, one of the real frontrunners in the conclave is the last Pope's Secretary of State, progressive candidate Pietro Parolin. Last week, the Vatican was forced to deny reports that claimed Parolin had fainted during a meeting.
We can expect also fake news to try to destroy a candidate, going after skeletons in the closet, you know.
The movie's director says his story is fiction, but the underlying theme is not.
And whenever that power vacuum exists, there's going to be people striving for it.
Vatican experts say, while the movie exaggerates the backroom backstabbing, its overall impact has been overwhelmingly positive.
Well, that is actually quite important for kind of inspiring the world and getting people to pay attention, because this process is all great publicity for the Vatican, and they're very well aware of that.
That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Jeff Semple, and this is St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Once a new pope is chosen, he will emerge on the balcony there and be revealed to the world. Thanks for watching. Good night from Rome.